This is the unsolved murder of Jill Dando, a British icon and a BBC presenter who was murdered in cold blood in front of her own home.
Jill Dando was an English journalist for the BBC and was rewarded the BBC's Personality of the Year in 1997. She was born in Somerset and had a brother who also worked for the BBC, but in the radio section. She was head girl of her sixth form and studied journalism at Cardiff University. Following in the steps of her brother and father, Jill became a trainee reporter for a local newspaper called Western Mercury. 5 long years later, she secured a job at the BBC by becoming a newsreader in 1985. As the years went on, she moved around different teams in the BBC, such as BBC South West, BBC Spotlight, and finally in 1998, she moved to London to present BBC News, which aired on BBC One and BBC Two. Here she presented Breakfast Time, Breakfast News, the BBC 1 o'clock news, the 6 o'clock news, Holiday, Crime Watch, and Songs of Praise. Jill had a high profile amongst the BBC staff and was even booked to host the British Academy Television Awards in 1999 at the Grosvenor House Hotel. She was also engaged to gynecologist Alan Tharving, and they were planning to marry on 25th of September 1999. On Monday, April 26, 1999, she had left Alan's home in Chiswick to return to her house in Fulham. She bought the house in Fulham and owned it, but stopped spending too much time there by 99, as she was both in the midst of selling it and spending most of her time in Alan's house. She returned to her home by car, and once she reached the front door at 11:32 a.m., she was shot in the head. Jill was found by her neighbour shortly after, and the police were called at 11:47. By 1:03 p.m., she was declared dead. Jill was 37 years old at the time of her murder.
This is a strange one, right, Chip? Because it's like, it feels like a planned murder, but at the same time, also a little bit unplanned, because this house was being for sale, was up for sale, sorry, which meant that she wasn't going there all the time. She was spending a lot of time at her boyfriend's gaff, right? It's not like she had a strict schedule and like a hitman or whoever wanted to kill her would be like, right, she gets home at 9 p.m, I'll be waiting outside her door, and this is like, no, it changed all the time. So
maybe
did they follow her home and go that way? But then it's like,
maybe like he was just turning up at that house like most days and waiting, and a second he saw, you know, like if you know that she lives there, even if she ain't there a lot,
she's gonna turn up at some point,
and you're some
right?
obsessed guy, or you know you've got another motive, she's gonna turn up at some point. So maybe you just turn up every day, park in an obscure spot and wait.
I just think that if you were gonna kill someone and it was gonna be that planned, you would probably pick somewhere that you knew she would frequent more often. Do you know what I mean? It just seems a little bit weird. Was it done spur of the moment? Did she get caught up in
maybe out
something?
of wherever she is, this was probably the safest way, to
actually kill her.
Least people around.
Yeah.
You know, because you can't kill her outside BBC offices.
No, that's not the best idea.
Maybe her husband's house is a little bit of a busy area.
Yeah,
but
true.
this might be the spot. They probably thought this was the spot.
Yeah.
The forensic team concluded that she was shot in the head, with a 9mm short caliber semi-automatic pistol being pushed right up against her skull. They also argued that this weapon was of poor quality, ruling out a professional assassin. Her neighbour had heard her scream but didn't think much of it. He hadn't heard a gunshot, which could have been due to the pressing of the gun against her head, which would have muffled and suppressed the gunshot sound. However, he still looked out of his window and saw a 6-foot white male around the ages of 40 walking away. This is the only certain sighting of the murderer. Some other witnesses reported seeing a man with thick black hair and a waxed jacket running from the house, but these haven't been confirmed. A postman who was delivering mail at around 10 a.m. noticed a dark-haired man in a suit watching Jill's house. A traffic warden saw someone illegally parked in a blue Range Rover and began to write down the license number, but the driver protested. Many witnesses saw these two characters throughout the day. Since she was a face known by millions, there was a lot of media coverage on the case. 6 months on, there were more than 1,000 statements recorded. A year on, and the Met Police had got nowhere. The case had a huge police inquiry, the biggest metropolitan police inquiry since the Yorkshire Ripper. The UK even contacted the United States to ask for advice to understand the ballistics and gunshots, as they dealt with it quite often. They concluded it was a professional hit, but a year later, they had nothing else to go on.
If you had committed this crime, right, pretty brutal crime, by the way, would you just be walking away? I mean, the neighbor said that they saw someone around, like a 6-foot white man just walking away. I feel as though you would be running, or you would jump in a car and get away that way. I don't think you would shoot someone and just walk.
Would running like not bring more attention to it, especially if you're only walking back from her doorstep to the car, the getaway car, I imagine. Which
If that's the case, though, you're experienced at this, so this is like a really professional job.
Yeah.
Because if you have the composure to kill a woman and then just walk away, fair enough. But I think most people, you're probably running, or I even think just getting in a car and going away.
I think if it was a professional person, they'd probably walk. If it was just like a random killing, then it was someone who's not experienced, they would probably run.
Either way, I'm surprised we didn't get a little bit more information off the bat, considering how massive of a case this became. Like we said, this is a BBC icon, right? This is someone with massive notoriety. People know her face. This is a brave murder, is what I mean. Like, in the sense that it's like, it takes a lot of balls to kill someone that high profile.
Yeah.
And it was interesting as well, the fact that they actually contacted America to help them out with this. Like, that's how much the UK wanted to find, but like even a year later, and nothing had really it hadn't gone anywhere. So you could tell that the police were struggling with this one, and it's almost a little bit embarrassing for the police to be struggling with such a high-profile case, high-profile person, and they didn't really have anything. They just had a few.
Think that it'd be a bit easier to solve, but at the same time, I bet there's so many fake tips coming through and
time wasters.
Yeah, leads that don't actually lead to anything. There's a lot.
It must be frustrating doing a case like this.
The police wondered what the motive was, and since her engagement ring was still on her finger, they ruled out a robbery. They also started creating a profile, one which suggested the murderer wasn't a hitman, and was more the act of a crazed individual. Shortly after, the police started looking into Jill's neighbor, Barry George, who could have been described as the local loner. He had previously stalked women and had sexual offenses on his record. And by 25th of May 2000, he was arrested and charged with Jill's murder on the basis of a single particle of gunshot residue on his coat. By July 2001, he was sentenced to life imprisonment, but many didn't believe he was the killer. After 2 failed appeals, Barry was acquitted on August 1st, as the Court of Appeal believed that this forensic evidence was just as likely to have come from an extraneous source as it would have from a gun fired by George. Finally, by December 2009, he had accepted substantial damages from The Sun and News of the World, which wrote and claimed he was Jill's murderer. There were over another 100 potential suspects that were never interviewed. Once Barry George was on the radar, other suspicious suspects were crossed off, including one suspect who was named. This individual was said to have shot Jill and disposed of the gun into a canal, but a senior investigating officer said, quote, "No further action on this suspect." Another one of the individuals was a very well-known man who organized his hits, but he was never spoken to either. CCTV footage of her on the day of her murder showed her stopping at a shopping center in Hammersmith, and confirmed that no one seemed to be following her, unless they learned how to avoid all cameras.
Barry George, man, I mean,
what a name.
They really wanted to have someone, because I said, it's embarrassing for the British police to not have anyone. So the moment that they even got a sniff that it could have been a neighbor, they said that he was a bit lonely. You know, he's almost like that stereotypical, like jealousy type killer. Do you know what I mean?
It was easy for them to pin it on him.
Yeah, with the gun residue, but there was so little.
The public would believe it. It was easy. It's an easy sell.
One of the big things that I'm absolutely terrified of is, you know, when you're going through like an airport check-in and they do that swab on you, right? And that there is for like, if you've been into contact with like gunpowder and like bomb residue and stuff like that. But could you imagine if you had just like leaned against a wall and another guy that maybe had been has leaned against that wall and you've touched it, and always think like, what if they did swab it? Like, what happens if it does go positive? And I've genuinely, you know, it could have just been from anything. So that was what they believe that actually happened to Barry Joyce, is he ended up getting acquitted after his appeal. He ended up getting, well, people don't really know how much money that he got from suing, I think it was News of the World and The Sun. He asked for 1.4 million, couldn't get that, and now some people, the rumor is he settled for an undisclosed fee. Some people reckon that's around 6 figures, and then there's some people that say he actually got nothing. So who knows? Let's start looking at a few of these theories.
Theory number 1. One of the shows which she presented was Crime Watch, and after her death, the TV show reconstructed her murder in hopes of helping the police. Since the show was so popular, people speculated that someone could have been arrested or convicted due to one of the Crime Watch episodes, and would have wanted revenge, thus killing its presenter, Jill. Joe the Spanish barman was an example. He had links to the murder of Kenneth Noy, an English criminal and ex-informant who was sentenced to life imprisonment for killing someone during a road rage incident. Kenneth was put into prison in 1996 thanks to Crime Watch. In the 2-year gap between Kenneth's crimes and his arrest, he had lived in Spain, and it is believed he spent a lot of time in an expat criminal bar where Joe worked. Joe owed Kenneth money and believed this was the way to pay Kenneth back and salvage his gangster reputation. There were rumors that she was investigating a pedophile ring in the 1990s and had given the BBC many documents about this ring. However, the BBC said they knew nothing of the sort. Many of her colleagues disagree, as they say that Jill was a presenter, not an investigator. But again, these documents would have been highly classified, and not many employees would have known of them, as they contained dangerous names.
I'm not the biggest fan of this particular theory. Mainly just because she's the presenter. She is not a investigative journalist.
No, so she wouldn't have been looking deep into this paedophile ring that they're talking about. She wouldn't have been the one trying to snuff it out. She's there to present the show, right? That's what she does. So it would be weird to target her.
The only thing that I can think is that it would be maybe like sending a message. Like, if you involve yourself in this sort of thing, there's consequences to pay. Do you know what I mean? Almost like a warning shot, and it stops people going,
yeah, because if you went and killed the journalist,
no one really knows,
and it wouldn't be so public knowledge. You go and kill the presenter of the show, on the other hand, that's a completely different ballgame.
Honestly, Chip, that's like people coming and killing us. Let's really hope that doesn't happen. And if it does, I hope that the whole internet can come together and find whoever did it, okay? I'm banking on you guys.
Oh, you're giving them ideas.
No, I know, yeah, terrible. Yeah, what am I thinking? Sorry. Look, seriously though, I don't really buy this one.
Nah, it isn't great. Like, it's just, there's not enough to go off, and it doesn't seem...
We don't buy it.
It's not tickling
your insides.
That was what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Theory number 2. Her brother Nigel had told the police that she was receiving unwanted approaches from a man, someone who she kept rejecting. He put forward the theory that it was a fan who was annoyed after all the rejections, but the authorities didn't agree with him.
Let's be honest, with any high-profile murder, this is always a theory. The crazed fan theory, there's pretty much any high-profile person has at some point had a weird person almost harass them, stalk them. It just happened. So it could have been, right? We can't rule that out, because we can't rule anything out. But let it be known that crazed fans are everywhere, and yet a lot of them, some are weirder than others, and there's definitely been cases where a crazed fan has actually killed the person. But I don't think this is that unique, and I don't think there is enough evidence to point towards the fact this was a crazed fan, except other than the fact that she had a crazed fan.
Theory number 3. Calls were made to the BBC claiming that the killing was the work of Serb groups in retaliation for a NATO bombing campaign in Serbia. These calls were never verified or seen as credible, but they were still aware they threatened more killings to come. Michael Mansfield, Barry George's defense barrister, argued Serbian warlord Arkan could have been responsible for the death by giving the order. This theory stemmed from the war that was happening at the time, the Kosovo War, which was the UK and NATO against Serbia. 3 weeks before Jill was killed, she appealed for aid for the Albanian refugees, an appeal which could have been seen by the Serbs. There was no gun found at the scene, but there was a bullet which was linked to the type of bullet which is used in the Balkans. To add to this theory, another journalist who was opposing the Serbs was killed in a similar manner to Jill outside his home in Belgrade. 4 men were convicted of this murder, and many believe both cases to be linked. However, as forensic criminal psychologist Dr. Adrian West questions, if this was a political murder, then why hasn't anyone publicly claimed responsibility? This link of the Serbian criminals was used by Barry George in his trial. He named Arkan and claimed his real target was the BBC director, but since his security was upped, they faltered and chose Jill instead. But Arkan was shot and killed 9 months after Jill passed away. Some strongly believe this theory, others not as much. Some BBC presenters were in Belgrade in April 1999 and came back unharmed, and it would have made more sense to kill a BBC member in the Serbs' homeland.
This is a wild, wild theory. I mean, it's getting political now. International dealings here. I'm not sure. Now, they say they wanted to go for the BBC director, but he upped his security. Does that naturally mean the next best thing is Jill? Do you know what I mean? I know that she was a big... I just feel as though if it was a politically motivated thing, one, usually in these circumstances, people come out and they claim these things.
Yeah, no
so
one claimed
if there's ever an attack, then usually a group will claim that because it's politically motivated and they want to share their views and get that across. So this one, first of all, just wasn't claimed. And then the second thing is it really enough for a BBC director to simply improve his security and they go, that's too much effort, we'll go for something else? Do you know what I mean? I feel like if it was really politically motivated, you would at least give it a go. Does that make sense?
Maybe his security was really up, so like if he's got security detail with him at all times and outside his home.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel would you settle like that? And I understand that she did actually previously sort of help the Albanian people, or at least try and provide aid to them at the time. I don't know. I think it's a really interesting theory because of everything happening at the time. There's something about it which just, it feels like a big reach to me. The interesting thing I think about this was actually to do with the gun and how it was actually linked to guns that were being used over in Serbia. That is relatively interesting, I suppose.
Yes,
but
I mean...
I don't know what you think about it. For me, anyways...
Barry George did use this in his trial, like it was like his main defense, that it wasn't him.
And that it was these Serbian criminals.
And
I mean, yeah, it feels like there might have to be more weight to it if that's what he used. And remember in his appeal, he was successful in his appeal. So there has to be some more compelling evidence towards it. I don't know. I don't know whether I just can't envision the Serbians being like, right, okay, we're going to go after Jill Dando. Do you know what I mean? I think there's probably better political figures to go after.
Were they trying to make a statement and this was the easiest one? While still getting maximum coverage?
I don't know, because this seems to be a very popular theory, and for some reason, I don't know whether I can't just wrap my brain around it, but it just doesn't seem to be hitting. I suppose something that does really add to the theory more than anything is actually the fact that it was another journalist had actually been killed by the Serbs, and this journalist was openly against Serbia, and he was killed on his doorstep as well. This was actually done in Belgrade, so it wasn't in the UK, but it does maybe give a bit more of an MO to it, and they could be said to do this, but at the same time, lots of people have been killed at their homes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this particular theory, especially down in the comments, if you guys would like to let us know, because we know it's a fan favorite theory, but what you feeling it? You're not feeling it?
It's a tough one for me.
All the theories, we'll go on to the last one here and we'll discuss them all in a second, and you guys can potentially make your minds up as well.
Theory number 4. Some documents which have been submitted to a Paris court suggested that the murder was a case of mistaken identity. The court papers and case had to do with a French fashion mogul, Gerald Marie, who was being investigated for an alleged sexual assault involving at least 11 women. The claim was that Gerald hired a hitman to murder a journalist, Lisa Brinkworth, who was about to expose sex crimes in the fashion industry for the BBC McIntyre Undercover series in 1998. Lisa was allegedly assaulted by Gerald at a dinner party, and there were several witnesses. The BBC advised her to not take legal action, and after the show was broadcast, she was kept in a safe house for years. The theory links the two BBC workers and argues that Jill was mistakenly killed, as the hitman aimed to kill Lisa instead. Lisa and Jill both looked similar in their appearance, both lived in West London and had mutual friends. Jill's fiance was Lisa's doctor. The documents which Lisa was going to publish stated that Gerald had asked a member of the Russian mafia to solve his problem. These documents have been passed to Scotland Yard to see what they have to say about it. Lisa said, quote, "Even if there was a tiny possibility, I don't know if I could live with that, so I'm hoping there's nothing in that. I try not to think about it. I really don't want it to be true."
This theory is interesting. It's a mistaken identity theory, and I'm sorry, but if you're a hitman,
You would
your first job is to make sure it's on the right person.
Yeah.
You are a terrible hitman if you're not killing the right person.
Yeah, I mean, I'd understand it if, let's say, they were sisters, or they were best friends and
They're living together.
They live together. They even live next door or whatever.
Yeah.
But they don't. They live in a similar area, and they look
similar.
Yeah,
like
it's
what?
not- And if this is the case, is the worst hitman of all time.
Just a howler from the hitman.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna rule this one out. I get that Lisa was obviously on the brink of exposing some serious shit, and maybe there was a hitman after her. But I think that it's just, I mean, come on, if we're hiring a hitman, you're making sure it's the right person. It's the first part of your job. All right. Right now, just to give you guys a little update, in 2017, an anonymous hitman had told Mark Williams Thomas, who was an ex-police officer who exposed Savile, so he's got some serious credentials here, that he knew the person who killed Jill, but wouldn't name him as he didn't want any repercussions. He was shown with a list of 100 names and was vague as to whether the hitman was on it or not.
Why did, okay, so I know who did it. I ain't gonna tell you, but I know who did it. It's just
it's just one of those ones.
But he is an anonymous hitman, to be fair, so.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine a hitman would want to come out and be like, yeah, I'm a hitman.
He's probably heard who done it through the hitman community.
Yeah, and you just know that if he does say like, oh, yeah, his name was on that list, he's gonna die. You're not gonna rat out a hitman, are you? Because your fate will probably wouldn't end in the best way, to put it nicely. Anyways, in 2019, the detective in this case said the case would never be solved. And quite frankly, I'm inclined to agree with him. I mean, we're now in 2022. It's been over 20 years since this happened. And sadly, I think this will remain one of the most high-profile unsolved murders. What theory is, if you were to pick one here, Chip? Honestly, none of these interest me.
Yeah, I don't really like any of the theories that we have in front of us. I think it's a hitman, but I just don't think it's a hitman in relation to these theories.
Yeah.
I don't like the mistaken identity. It just sounds too
basic,
too stupid as well. Like,
yeah.
Oh, surely you just can't get that wrong. The Serbian one,
interesting, but so political.
Yeah.
So political for a BBC presenter.
I feel like I'd need more on it to maybe make my assessment there. Crime Watch, not going with Crime Watch either. Like we said, she wasn't a journalist. She was just a presenter of the show. It'd be a bit stupid to kill her for that.
Yeah. Crazed fan.
Crazed fan. I mean, it could be a crazed fan.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, all these theories have a little bit of weight behind them. We'd love to know your guys' thoughts. If you could leave a comment down below and let us know what you guys think about this. I think it's fascinating that someone so high profile can be shot and killed on their own front door, and this is the best we have. It almost feels like there is either some deep-rooted corruption with some serious covering up and some information that definitely doesn't want to be out there, or truly just, I don't want to say the perfect crime, but an amazing crime has been committed in the sense that they haven't been caught, and they're probably buzzing with that.
They did a good job. So the hitman obviously is pretty good at his job.
Assuming it wasn't a mistaken identity, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, leave your comments down below. What do you think happened in this case? We're very curious. And Chip, tell them what they need to do.
Make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, leave a like, and obviously follow us on Spotify. You can listen to the case there. And we upload every Monday at 6 p.m.
Yeehaw!